The rain on Beatty's Ford Road hit different at 11:47 p.m. Not the soft kind that whispers against windows, but the heavy, sustained kind that soaked through scrubs in under 30 seconds and turned the gutters outside Charlotte-Mecklenburg General into fast-moving rivers. Nurse Adeze Okafor had been standing at the bus stop for 14 minutes because the 74 line was running late again, and her feet hurt in the specific deep way that feet hurt after a 12-hour shift on a maternity ward, where 3 of those hours had been spent standing in one place holding the hand of a woman who had no one else. She was 31 years old and weighed 118 pounds, and she smelled faintly of antiseptic and the cocoa butter lotion she had rubbed into her hands during her 9:00 p.m. break in the stairwell. The only break she had actually taken. In her bag was a green fabric wallet that had belonged to her mother, hand-stitched with orange thread along the seam, and inside it were 3 cards, one of which was declined as of that morning. A bus pass that had 4 more days on it, and a folded $10 bill she had been carrying for 6 days. She had not spent it. She was not sure why. She stood at the bus stop and watched the rain, and did not think about the fact that she had $10 to her name until the old woman sat down beside her. She did not know who the woman was. But the woman already knew something about Adeze that Adeze herself had not yet understood. Her full name was Adeze Miriam Okafor, and she had come to Charlotte from Enugu 17 years ago with her mother, her younger brother Dubem, and 2 suitcases that together weighed 43 kilograms. Her mother had worked as a seamstress out of the back bedroom of their apartment on South Boulevard, charging $12 for alterations and $40 for full dresses, and Adeze had sat beside her every evening, doing homework at the same table where her mother cut fabric. She had gotten her nursing certification at 23, her RN at 26, and she had been at Charlotte-Mecklenburg General for the past 5 years, on the same ward, the same overnight rotation, the same walk to the 74 line at whatever hour the shift ended. She was not unhappy about any of it. That was the important thing to understand about Adeze. She did not move through her life with bitterness. She moved through it with a particular kind of forward momentum, the kind that does not require applause, because it was never built for an audience. She sent $340 home to her mother every month. She bought her own groceries in precise, calculated quantities. She did not own a car. She had $10 in a green fabric wallet that had belonged to her mother, and she sat at a bus stop in the rain at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday in October, and her back hurt, and her feet hurt, and the bus was late. And none of that had broken her, because she had made a decision a long time ago, possibly at the table where her mother cut fabric, that she was not the kind of person things broke. The old woman arrived without ceremony. She came from the direction of the parking garage, which was odd, because the parking garage was for hospital staff and visitors, and the woman had no badge and no umbrella, and she walked with a slowness that suggested her hips had been speaking to her in pain for a long time. She was perhaps 72, perhaps 75, dressed in a dark wool coat that had seen many winters, and a pair of shoes that were dry inside a plastic shopping bag she carried in one hand. She sat down on the metal bench beside Adeze without speaking, placed the plastic bag with the shoes on her lap, and folded her hands over it. She smelled of something Adeze could not name immediately, camphor, and underneath it something warmer, like a goosey or dried herbs, the kind of smell that belongs to a kitchen that has been cooking for decades. Her hands were the hands of someone who had never stopped working. The knuckles were large. The skin was tight over them. She sat in the rain on the open bench and did not appear to register the rain. Adeze said, "There's a shelter inside the lobby. Stays open till 1. The woman said, "I know." She did not move. Adeze looked at her for a moment, then looked back at the road. The 74 line's headlights were not visible. The rain intensified for approximately 45 seconds and then returned to its previous level, and the old woman made no adjustment to her posture or her expression. "Are you waiting for someone?" Adese asked. "No." "Do you need help getting somewhere?" The woman turned and looked at Adese with eyes that were dark and steady and not especially soft. "Do you always ask strangers 3 questions before you sit still?" Adese almost laughed. "Sorry. Don't be sorry. It's a good habit." They sat in silence for a while. Adese could hear the water hitting the top of the bus shelter, the ones over the seats that didn't extend far enough to cover the front of the bench where they were sitting, and she could feel the cold working its way through the damp fabric of her scrubs at the shoulders. She was thinking about whether she had enough rice at home for 2 meals, or only 1 when the old woman coughed. Not dramatically, but continuously, the kind of cough that comes in waves and does not fully resolve between them. Adese had been a nurse for 8 years. She heard that cough with the part of her that never fully clocked out. "How long have you had that cough?" The woman waved a hand. "Old age has a sound. That's mine. You should have someone look at it. I have a doctor. I have 3 doctors. I have more doctors than I have family left." She said it without self-pity, the way a person states facts about weather or distance. The bus still had not come. Adese opened her bag and found the small packet of cough drops she kept in the front pocket, the generic cherry ones from the hospital break room supply that cost the department $0, $0.02 per drop, but were always fully stocked because the head of department believed in small dignities. She held 3 out to the woman. The woman looked at them, then took them, then put one in her mouth without thanking Adese, which somehow made the gesture feel more natural than gratitude would have. At 12:11 a.m., when the bus had still not arrived, and the rain had settled into a steady, determined pour, the woman reached into the pocket of her wool coat and produced a small coin purse. She opened it. Inside were coins, quarters, dimes, nickels, and she counted them into her palm slowly. Adese watched without meaning to. The woman counted them twice. Then she said, quietly and to no one in particular, still $1.40 short. Adese looked at the coin purse. She looked at the woman's hands. She opened her own bag. She found the green fabric wallet. She took out the folded $10 bill, the one she had been carrying for 6 days, the one she could not fully account for keeping, and she held it out. The woman looked at it for a long moment. "That is too much," the woman said. "The bus costs $2.40. Keep the rest. I don't take charity." "It's not charity. You bought me company for 20 minutes in the rain. That's worth something." The woman looked at Adese again with those steady dark eyes, and for a moment Adese felt like she was being read rather than looked at, assessed at a depth she couldn't quite locate. Then the woman took the bill. She folded it once and placed it in the coin purse and closed the clasp with a precise, practiced movement, the way someone closes something they intend to keep. "What is your name?" the woman asked. "Adese. Your mother named you well." She did not explain what she meant by that. She put the coin purse back in her pocket. The bus appeared around the corner, headlights cutting through the rain, running 12 minutes late on a route that was supposed to run every 20. The woman stood up from the bench with the careful deliberation of someone who has learned to negotiate with their own body, picked up the plastic bag with the shoes, and without looking back said, "Sleep, Adese. Your body knows what your mind hasn't caught up to yet." The bus doors opened. Adese got on. She did not see which direction the woman went. If this story is hitting you the way I think it is, stay with it. Because what happens in the next few days is something Adese never saw coming. and something she could never have engineered herself. She was too tired that night to think about it. She rode the bus 7 stops, got off at South Boulevard, walked the 4.5 blocks home in the rain because she had missed the window where running made sense, and now there was nothing to do but walk. And she let herself into her apartment at 12:43 a.m. and set her bag on the kitchen table and stood in her kitchen in her wet scrubs for approximately 2 minutes, not thinking, just standing. Then she changed her clothes, ate a small bowl of leftover rice she heated for 90 seconds, set her alarm for 6:15, and went to sleep. She did not think about the old woman again until 3 days later, on a Sunday, when a woman named Constance Owusu Boateng walked into the hospital and asked the front desk to be directed to the maternity ward, specifically to Nurse Adeze Okafor, and waited in the waiting area for an hour and 40 minutes until Adeze's shift allowed for a break. Constance Owusu Boateng was perhaps 48 years old, dressed in a linen suit the color of warm sand, and she wore the particular kind of quietness that belongs to people who have enough power that they no longer need to announce it. She rose when Adeze came through the door and extended her hand with a directness that Adeze associated with someone accustomed to getting to the point. "You sat with my mother at a bus stop 3 nights ago," Constance said. "In the rain." Adeze remembered. She was waiting for the 74 line. She was not. She had driven herself there and could not drive herself back because her hip had locked up, and she did not want to call me because we had argued that afternoon. Constance said this without particular emotion, the way one explains the mechanics of a situation. "She called me from the bus. She told me a young nurse had given her her last $10 without being asked. I want to return it." "It wasn't my last $10, Adeze said. "It was, technically, but the distinction felt important in a way she could not fully explain." Constance looked at her steadily. "My mother is not in the habit of asking for help. She's also not in the habit of calling me at midnight to tell me about strangers." She opened her bag and produced an envelope. "This is not change for a 10. This is something else." Adeze did not open the envelope in front of her. She had a policy about that. She had invented it right then, based on the instinct that whatever was in the envelope was more than she expected, and that she needed to be alone when she confirmed it. She opened it on her break, in the stairwell, on the same step where she had applied cocoa butter 3 nights ago. Inside the envelope was a check for $4,000 and a card that read, "My mother told me you were the kind of person who asks 3 questions before she sits still. We are looking for exactly that kind of person. Call me." Below it was a phone number, and beneath the phone number, in smaller text, a company name: Owusu Boateng Community Health Initiative. Registered 2019, operating across Mecklenburg and Union counties. 16 staff. Expanding 3 community nursing positions, currently unfilled. Adeze sat in the stairwell for a while. She held the check in one hand and the card in the other, and she looked at them both. She did not cry. She pressed both of them flat against her chest, the way her mother had pressed fabric before cutting, aligning the grain. Then she went back to her ward. She called the number on Wednesday. Constance answered on the second ring. They spoke for 22 minutes. Constance explained that the initiative ran mobile health clinics in under-resourced neighborhoods across Charlotte. The ones where the hospitals were too far and the urgent cares were too expensive, and the gap between those two things was filled by nothing except time and faith, and neighbors who knew a little something about what a fever could mean. The nursing positions paid $58,000 annually, included benefits, and required someone capable of clinical work in non-clinical settings, someone who did not need applause to function, someone who showed up in the rain when the bus was late and still had $10 to give. Constance did not say that last part out loud. She did not need to. "When can you start?" Constance asked. "I have to give Charlotte Mecklenburg 4 weeks' notice. That's responsible. I have questions about the role. I'd be concerned if you didn't." They arranged a formal meeting for the following Tuesday at the initiative's offices in the Beatties-Ford Road corridor, 4 blocks from the bus stop where Adizay had sat in the rain on a Thursday night with $10 in her bag and given it away before the bus arrived. The meeting lasted 2 hours. The offices were clean and purposeful and smelled of coffee and printer paper and the faint trace of someone's jollof rice heated in the break room microwave. 3 of the 16 staff members stopped to speak to Adizay in the hallway, not because they had been told to, but because the building had that quality of a place where people are not performing their work. They were just doing it. Adizay recognized the feeling. She had spent 8 years trying to maintain it on a ward where the budget pressures and the administrative requirements pressed against it daily. She accepted the position before the meeting was formally over. She gave her notice to Charlotte Mecklenburg General the following morning. Her supervisor, a woman named Dina Barclay, who had worked the maternity ward for 19 years, looked at the letter for a moment and then looked at Adizay and said, "They're getting someone exceptional." Adizay thanked her. She did not cry. She folded the copy of the letter she had printed for herself and put it in her bag beside the green fabric wallet that had belonged to her mother. What no one at Charlotte Mecklenburg knew, what Constance only mentioned in passing as a detail she assumed Adizay already knew, was that the mother, the woman with the wool coat and the camphor smell and the cough that moved in waves, had been watching the bus stop from her car for 35 minutes before her hip locked and she had committed to sitting down. Her name was Vivienne Owusu Boateng, and she had been a registered nurse herself in Accra from 1973 to 1991 before she emigrated, and she had developed a habit over those years of watching how people behaved when they thought no one who mattered was paying attention. She had watched Adizay at the bus stop with that patience, and she had noted exactly 3 things: that Adizay had listened before she offered anything, that she had given without calculating, and that when she gave, she had found a way to make it feel like an exchange rather than charity, which was the hardest thing of all. She had called Constance not to repay a kindness. She had called to report a finding. She had said, "I found the 3rd nurse." And Constance had understood immediately, because they had been looking for the 3rd nurse for 4 months. Adizay started at the initiative on a Monday in November. Her first mobile clinic was in a church parking lot on Beatties-Ford Road, 7 blocks from the bus stop. She arrived at 7:40 a.m. The van was already there. 3 community members were already waiting before the clinic opened at 8. One of them a man who had not seen a healthcare professional in 3 years, because the copay was $45, and the bus ride was an hour each way, and neither of those facts had stopped being true. Adizay took his blood pressure, noted a reading of 158/96, and referred him to a follow-up appointment at no cost through the initiative's partnership with a local physician's practice. She did this calmly and completely, and the man thanked her 3 times. She told him once was enough. She sent her mother $340 in December, as she always had. Then she sent $100 more, because she could, and because her mother's machine had needed a new motor for 2 years, and she had never been able to afford both the motor and the month. She did not tell her mother why there was extra. Her mother called on a Saturday morning and said, "You sound different." Adizay said, "I'm the same." Her mother said, "No, you sound like yourself." They talked for 40 minutes. Daisy was sitting in her apartment at the kitchen table, her bag on the chair beside her, the green fabric wallet inside it, the $10 envelope from Constance folded and kept in the front pocket, not because she needed to keep it, but because it had become a different object than it started as. It was no longer a check. It was a record of what a Thursday night in the rain had made possible. Vivienne Owusu-Boateng came to the Beatties-Ford Road Clinic on its third Saturday. She came in the same wool coat, her hips still deliberate, but her cough somewhat quieted. She sat in the plastic chair across from Adaize's station and allowed Adaize to take her vitals without argument. Her blood pressure was excellent. Her lungs were clear enough, the cough a residual of something that had already resolved. Adaize made a note. Vivienne watched her write it. "You gave away your last $10, Vivienne said. "I gave away $10, Adaize said, still writing, "to a stranger. To someone who needed it at the time." Vivienne was quiet for a moment. "Then, my daughter has been trying to find someone like you for 4 months. She told me. She didn't tell you everything." Vivienne folded her hands. "The initiative is expanding. Constance is applying for a federal grant. $2.3 million. If the grant comes through, she will need to hire a clinic director. Someone to build the program. Someone who knows what she's doing and doesn't need to be managed." She looked at Adaize with those same dark, steady eyes from the bus stop. "She has already written your name in the application." Adaize stopped writing. "I don't have a director's credentials. You have a registered nursing license, 8 years of clinical experience, and the specific judgment I spent 45 minutes in a parking lot waiting to confirm." Vivienne uncrossed and recrossed her hands. "Credentials follow the work. The work doesn't follow the credentials. I learned that in Accra in 1974, and it remains true." Adaize looked at her for a moment. Then she looked back at the form. She completed the entry. She put the cap on the pen. She said, "You were never waiting for the 74 line. I was not. You chose to sit in the rain. I needed to see if you'd give without being asked." Adaize thought about this. She thought about the 6 days she had carried the $10 without spending it, and the moment she had reached for it without calculating, and the fact that it had not felt like a decision at the time so much as an inevitability, the thing you do when it is obvious what should be done. "Why didn't you just introduce yourself?" "Because then it would have been a transaction," Vivienne said. "I needed to see what you did when no one who mattered was watching." A pause. Everyone who matters was watching. The federal grant application was submitted in February. The award notification came on a Tuesday in April, and Constance called Adaize at 3:17 p.m. and said one word, "Approved." Adaize was in the van on the way back from a clinic in Greer Heights. She pressed her phone to her ear and looked out at the road and did not speak for a moment. "When do we start?" she said. "We already have," Constance said. "There is a woman who sits in a church parking lot on a Saturday morning on Beatties-Ford Road now, a mobile clinic van behind her. 3 folding tables set up with blood pressure cuffs and referral forms, and a small basket of those generic cherry cough drops from the hospital break room, because small dignities are worth funding at any scale. Her name is on the van, in modest letters, Okafor Community Health. She is 32 years old. She weighs the same as she did the Thursday night she sat in the rain. She still takes the same bus on the days she doesn't drive the van. She still sends $340 to her mother every month, plus the amount that covers the sewing machine motor, which her mother replaced last winter and uses every evening at the same table where Adaize once sat doing homework. She is not triumphant in the way that would make for a dramatic photograph. She is quietly and specifically purposeful. The way her mother cut fabric, aligned to the grain, no wasted motion, every cut exactly where it needed to be. The night she gave away that $10 bill, She thought she was helping a woman catch a bus. She was. She was also, without knowing it, answering a question that would open the next decade of her life. But the part that matters, the part Vivienne Owusu-Boateng went to a parking lot in the rain to confirm, is that Adeze was not giving because she expected anything. She was giving because it was obvious what should be done, and she was the kind of person who did obvious things even when no one was watching. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the whole thing. Dexter Mensah thought he was paying his debt when he handed his maid an envelope and told her to disappear. He thought wealth was a thing you could issue and retract. He thought doors, when closed, stayed closed. He did not understand that the woman on the other side of that door was not waiting for him to open it again. She had already started building her own. There are people in your life right now who are doing the same, carrying something the world has not recognized yet, giving from the last of what they have because that is simply who they are. The question is whether you are the system that turns them away, the stranger who sits beside them in the rain, or the person who finally understands what it is they've been carrying all along. If someone came to you on the worst night of your life, not to rescue you, just to sit with you in the rain until the bus came, would you know how to receive it? And if the situation were reversed, would you stop? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about hidden strength, quiet power, and the people the world overlooks until they change everything. I'll see you in the next one.